Radio, RadioNX.TV at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, and our focus always, every single week, is the same, and that focus is Christians from around Indianapolis who are doing good, based on Titus 3:1, 8, and 14. Paul's admonition to Pastor Titus: do good, do good, do good, and that's what we are focused on in this particular show. Comenius Institute is our sponsor. Comenius Institute is one of those nonprofits in Indianapolis, and that particular nonprofit operates across 3 different bridges, and we'll talk about those 3 bridges. The first bridge that we cross is into college, and this is the kind of work that I do down at IUPUI. I'm supporting young Christian college students who are in unbelieving often and public university setting, and helping them to navigate their subject areas, their disciplines, helping them to think Christianly about what they're doing at college, answering all different kinds of questions. In fact, this particular Sunday, I'll be with Yale Wall and Andy Folan and a few other folks down at the church, Yale Wall's church down in the city. Looking forward to that, doing some apologetic responses to great questions that people ask in their particular service. That's this Sunday. And then on the second bridge that we cross is into community. That's what we do here on this radio show. This radio show is really introducing people from around Indianapolis to each other who are doing good, Christians who are doing good. And we have yet another person here with us today, Mark Dowd, who's going to be talking about that in just a few moments. And then the third bridge that we cross is into culture. And that means that all of the writing and the speaking and all of those kinds of things that I'm doing on a regular, consistent basis, we are doing so that we can help people think differently about the culture in which we live. I'm actually going to Nashville tomorrow, and down in Nashville I'll be speaking at a transdisciplinary conference and helping Christian higher ed folks to think differently about what they're doing at the college setting and the Christian setting as well. So lots of different things that go on in the kind of work that we do in and around Indianapolis. Thankful for the opportunities that we're given, and thankful to be here yet again this morning. So this morning I wanted to introduce Mark Dowd to you. Mark works for the state of Indiana in the Housing Association. He'll be talking about that this morning. I'll be asking him questions about what he does and the kind of work that he does. So Mark, thanks ever so much for joining us. We're grateful for your presence in Indianapolis. And why don't we start off by just talking a little bit about your biography and your family, whatever you'd like to tell us about.
Okay. Well, Mark Dowd, I've lived here in central Indiana for over 20 years now. I'm originally from the northern part of the state, but my wife and I moved here when we were newly married. Didn't have any children yet, but like I said, we've been here for about 20 years. We have a daughter who's actually at IUPUI and is finishing up her junior year.
Nice.
There, and doing great there. And she's quite busy, as most college students are, but she's working part-time in at least two jobs, maybe a third that I might not know about. But
wow.
So she keeps busy. And then I have a 12-year-old son who's, like many boys, are into video games, and so we try to monitor and limit that. But he seems to have certain gifts when it comes to electronics and computers and things like that. So
that's great.
Yeah, so I'm blessed with a wonderful family, and our church home is up on the north side, and so we have a lot of friends there that have stuck with us throughout the years, and you know, when your life has ups and downs.
Sure.
But yeah, we are blessed. I work been there almost 4 years now. In April, it'll be 4 years with the Indiana Housing and Community Development Association.
Nice.
My title is account manager, and I work in the homeownership department. And you know, I don't think too many people realize there is such a department in Indiana Housing or anywhere in state government that helps people buy homes when they are financially ready. And so that's what we do. I've learned a lot in the last 4 years. We do a lot with mortgage companies and with banks, as well as with realtors, trying to get the word out that these programs are available to people. So, yes.
All different kinds of folks that we have here in the show, and I'm always grateful when we talk to somebody who's actually helping people buy homes. Let's talk a little bit about home ownership and why that's so important to us generally as human beings, more specifically as Christians, and how that is benefiting people in Indianapolis.
Yes, our agency, of course, is involved in a lot of different aspects of housing. Section 8, weatherization, senior housing, and things like that. But what we do is specifically just kind of honed in on the homeownership part. And so, homeownership, it's not for everyone. But for most families, it helps to have a stable place to call home, a place that is roof over your head. Hopefully, in most cases, at least some semblance of a yard for families, especially if they have children and you need room and space to play and things like that. So these programs are out there. There's a lot of people that don't know about them, about the programs, but they might be working and have a good work history, good financial history. They pay their bills on time and things like that. But they might not be in a job, unfortunately, that allows them to save extra money. And that's harder and harder today in today's world with just different things that require funds. Whether it's, you got to have a car, transportation, clothing, food. Everyone wants a cell phone now. That was something that wasn't an issue when I grew up.
Exactly, yeah.
But, if you have older kids, then they want or need a cell phone. So there's more and more living expenses than there were even 30 years ago for people. And of course, our taxes, it seems like continue to go up, or at least haven't gone down. Let's say that. At federal level, I guess they've gone down recently, and we can be thankful we live in a low tax state.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
But still, there's a lot of things that cost more now than they used to. And so with our homeownership programs, we're interested in helping people who can't save up enough money to put down on a house. And as the housing inventory, especially in the $250,000 level and lower, has narrowed over the last few years because it's hard to find those type of homes that are in good condition.
Yes.
But those are about the price level where our programs help the most.
So 0 to 250.
Approximately.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's really based on the applicant's income.
Okay.
If they can afford more, we'll support them more. But
sure.
At that level, at a 97 loan to value, you have to bring at least 3% down to the closing.
Okay.
And that's several thousands of dollars. And
right.
Some people have it, and that's great. Maybe some people have a rich uncle or parents that will help them out, and that's great too. But in many cases, they don't. And so that's what our programs are able to do, is to help with that initial down payment. And depending on the program, if they move too soon, they may have to pay it back.
Right.
But if they stay in that home for 2 years or more, then it's forgiven. And these programs, of course, are funded not through tax dollars. A lot of times people kind of assume that tax dollars are going to support these programs. And I understand people will say, well, you got to, they should save their money. They should, earn their way and earn the right kind of to live in a house. And that's true. But at the same time, our overall goal is to have more home ownerships, because that's better for a community.
Sure.
So if we can get someone in the home who's financially ready, then that stabilizes neighborhoods and communities across the state of Indiana. So that's kind of what we do.
That's really a great overview. I wanted to go back and pick up on some of those threads and tug on those a couple seconds. For those of you who are listening, who are in the military, when Mark mentions Section 8, he does not mean the mental concerns that some people might have. Section 8 in the military is that you're not well. Yes, yeah, mentally mental concerns there. So I'm honestly just teasing. The emphasis, of course, in the state of Indiana. I wanted to talk about that for just a second, because I think this is really an important idea. I wanted to say this just in terms of numbers, because I think some people will appreciate this. So I moved from Illinois in 2005 and moved here to Indiana. In 1999, when we moved to Illinois, my taxes on my house, much smaller home, in fact, probably half the size of the home that I have now, were more than the taxes I pay right now in 2019. So I just want to say, I'm really grateful to live in Indiana. It's a financially stable state. I think that's really a powerful thing to say. Let's go back to this statement that you made, though. This is not from tax dollars. So that immediately caught my attention. I would think that all federal or state governmental programs come from tax dollars. Tell us where the money comes from.
Yeah, it's very unique, and not all states do this. But our director was in the lending business for many years, so he knows the finance of how all this works. But it's to put simply, our agency is the Housing Finance Authority for the state of Indiana, and every state has a what we call HFA. So having that finance authority allows us to do housing bonds. So that's one source of our revenues. When we sell bonds into the market, we make some funds off of that, and then of course we loan it out, and then those loans are repaid. And so it's a kind of a evolving loan kind of fund internally, I should say. I mean, not that we're necessarily loaning the money out, because our loans are sold in the secondary market, and the financing and servicing is handled by another entity. But the ability to issue bonds and have them sold gives us some of that financial support. And then the other way is, as I just briefly said there, when our loans are done by a local lender, they are then packaged and sent to U.S. Bank, which is our master servicer.
Okay.
And then they bundle those up and sell them in the secondary market. And when they sell those loans into the secondary market, they're safe loans. Then we get a percentage of that. So that's our financing stream, so to speak, that helps us pay for the program.
So I have to ask, because I'm such a fan of Mitch Daniels and all the good things that he did for this state back in 2004 when he was elected and beyond. When did this particular program come to be? I've not heard of such a program before, and it would be kind of cool, frankly, to have a promo from your government agency to actually tell people about this, because folks like me, I didn't know that. I thought this was all government. My tax money were going
there. Yeah, I think that most of the programs that we have now have been around for about 10 years.
Okay,
that's about how long our director's been in place.
Good,
as far as I know.
Yeah.
Before he was in place, and like I said, most states probably do it a little bit different than what we do here in Indiana. But they do use some federal dollars, and that's fine. That's what the federal government and our legislators that we elect decided to do a long time ago. But for our agency, that also, when you take federal dollars, there's more strings attached, and there's more hoops that you have to jump through.
There you go.
And our state used those for a while, but we've realized after being in the system for a while, our director, he's like, those programs are kind of hard to use. It's kind of hard for the home buyer to take advantage of them, and it's hard for lenders to originate the loan, because you got to do this and this and this and this and this. And so he's like, there's got to be a better way. So he figured out a way to back us out of those programs we were in when he first started, and then introduce some new programs that are a little bit more straightforward as far as originating a loan, and then the home buyer being able to take advantage of it.
Those of you who are listening live, pick us up on the podcast later on, or the archive Facebook Live, or catching us live right now. Understand, this is a very unique situation that we're talking about here in terms of housing in the state of Indiana, and the kind of work that Mark is doing through this government agency is really great to hear these kinds of good words, that there's a different way to go about helping people in the world around us, and we're really grateful for that. This is a very fantastic approach to how we think about life and living. Let's take another thread and pull that for a moment and talk about the issue of stability and order. You mentioned a moment ago when you said that we encourage home ownership because it gives neighborhoods stability. That was one of your comments. This is a powerful statement, and one that I don't know that everybody really fully appreciates. Tell us why that's so important, generally speaking, to everybody.
Well, I guess from a layman's perspective, because I'm sure there's sociologists that could maybe dive into this more, or maybe bring out points that I don't know about. But I think by and large, generally speaking, when you have neighborhoods that have intact families, that adds stability. And it really all kind of, in my view, stems from the family. And families need homes and need stable places to live. And I came from another community that I worked in before I moved to Indianapolis up north. And kind of the nature of the industry up there, I don't want to say the community, not that it's a bad thing or anything, but there was more, you saw more people taking jobs in the manufacturing plants for a year or two, maybe less, and then moving to another plant or even moving out of the community. And there's just more transitory. Okay. And so that's hard when that happens, that's hard for families to kind of establish roots. And stick with it with a certain school district, and the teachers get to know those kids and can help them along better and things. So there's just so many facets involved that I'm sure I hadn't even thought of, that a lot of it stems from being able to have stability in a family life. And a big factor of that is the home that they need to live in. Now, that doesn't say someone can't grow up in an apartment or condominiums. We do use our programs on condominiums too, or anything like that, where there's not a stronger tie to ownership. But we think that that's probably the best way, as far as home ownership, to offer those communities a stable peer. And there's, whether it's 25 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 homes in a community, in some small communities, it still gives a family an opportunity for stability. Now, that doesn't say everybody who's in a home is stable.
Sure.
Family life is tough, and people's lives, unfortunately, can take a turn for the worse. But sure, if you're not even if you don't even have those things to go to, then it just makes it that much harder.
Yeah. This really speaks to the Christian view of things when we think about order and stability. We start in Genesis, and of course this gives us our framework for all things. Genesis gives us the whole foundation for an orderly life, an orderly world that God has established. And then all the way through First Testament teaching, we see the same thing happening over and over and over again, that the benefit is always because of the family. The family is one of the first stabilized units of creation that God has established in Genesis chapter 2. Very important, very powerful for us to understand this. And you're right, the stability, when you have a home, and that we're talking about a house now, that really does add to that process of understanding stability from that point of view. Let's talk a minute about the issue from your perspective. You had mentioned that from your perspective, you think family is really important. Obviously, I do too. And anybody that's probably listening to this really believes in family as well. Let's talk about your Christian view of family and why that's important to you. Why does and how does your Christianity inform what you do, how you think, how you live?
The Christian faith has always stressed the importance of families and for individual responsibility. So it's important to have those structures of accountability, even within a family, to challenge each other to do things that are right. It's getting a little bit far afield from homeownership, but if you don't have someone in your life that can kind of help you stay within the guardrails, whether that's a faith, and I think that's the best way, your family, close friends, then it doesn't take too long before, it's like, large ships, they can be 1 or 2 degrees off center, and 5 or 6 years later, they're like way off their track, right?
Right.
And that can happen in anyone's life. So you really need to have people and institutions around a person, and that's what the church does so well, to keep people centered in faith. And so that's been my experience. I think, the other thing too about the Christian faith, it should be a lifelong thing. You can't just come and go as you please. You have to really be committed to it. It's kind of like homeownership in that way. I guess you have to be committed to be a homeowner.
Yeah.
And there's more responsibilities when you're a homeowner than if you're renting or something like that. So with those added benefits of homeownership comes added responsibilities, and that's kind of the same way in someone's life. You can't. The Christian faith is not something you just kind of step into when it's convenient. There's many times when you you want to do something else, but your faith says, no, that's wrong, that's sin, that shouldn't happen. And you just gotta, sometimes bear the consequences of that. They're usually not, massively wrong unless you're way off course. And again, if you have the institutions and the family members and the friends to kind of hold you accountable, then that should never happen. But it's a fact of life in a fallen world, and so you need you need a roof over your head, not only physically but metaphorically.
Yes.
And the Christian faith can keep you
That's a really fantastic statement. Honestly, one of those things that we have consistently heard from our guests, and that is that living in a broken world, we need the kinds of structures and framework that a Christian view of life and things actually gives us. We're grateful for that, grateful for Mark's words here. And we're going to pick up on that fallen world emphasis, talk a little bit more about why the housing group that Mark works for is benefiting those who might be less fortunate, who might be on the fringes of poverty. You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio at RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We're going to take a one-song break. And when we return, we'll come back to our conversation with Mark Dowd. We'll be right back. Facebook Live, you're still with us, but we'll carry on our conversation with our wonderful producer across the way who always forgets that we're on Facebook Live.
I'll get in trouble when we move to this. That is too funny.
Yeah,
you want to come off the fridge? Join me one day in the neighborhood I'm working.
There you go.
Yeah, ain't no fringe on this property.
That's right.
Let's smack that pop.
Yeah, you're
I do
ground zero.
Oh yeah, man. I'm out here in the middle dealing with single moms, 25 years old with 3 kids, 10, 8, and 3, and one of them is autistic. I'm dealing with returning parents, who just been incarcerated, they coming back in and they don't have license, they don't know where to start. So I'm dealing in ground zero. Yeah, but God made me for it, so I don't never ever shirk the responsibility. But it's just when you hear different kind, when you say the fringes of poverty or something, like, whoo! I'm trying to get people to the fringes of poverty, and we made some progress, and that's true. You pick them up where they are. Yep. And if you can get them to the fringe of poverty, now maybe they can see, okay, there's this hurdle I can jump, and now I can be out of poverty. Right. Yeah, it gives them hope. Yep. But you got to start someplace. So I had this old adage I use all the time, there's no grass blades without grass roots. And,
look at that.
Most things that I'm always involved in is like development of, creation of, plant the seed of. And then when it takes a minute to grow, and then when it does, you can say, okay, good, go back and do this again. Go pollinate some more. And then that's really all we can do. All of us. That's all we can do. How can we lend our energy to whatever mission or cause? And this is important because a lot of people don't even understand the importance of a homeowner. And they don't teach it in my community. Yeah. They don't even teach it. Yeah. And you get 40, 45 years old and go to buy your first house and you don't know what's going on.
Right.
That happens over and over. And that's a train wreck waiting to happen. Yeah.
And our programs are structured with that in mind.
Culturally sensitive to understand some of these people ain't never even they don't know nothing about owning a home.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame that you're invested in. For long term, helping people long term to really make a big decision choice that's going to have huge consequences.
Yeah, because if you start early, if you start at 20, 21, understanding home ownership, like you say, work your way to the steps, and then by the time you're 40, this is maybe your third home, and you've made money because you were able to understand the process of buying and selling this home and the property value of this home. Now you got some leverage, but
right.
You just go out there and I'm buying a house.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good luck on that.
Yeah.
Where's this neighborhood going to be in 5 years? What's this property going to look like in 10 years? I mean, what's the neighborhood plan? It ain't teaching none of that. I'm just going to buy a house, Yeah. And like I said, that's a train wreck.
Well, the Near East Side here
they're doing it.
They were in there. I think they're across the street now. But
Bonner Center.
Yeah, in Bonner Center. They've got homes that they bought and were rehabilitated or cleared and rebuilt.
We got another name for that in the community, but
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, gentrification.
yeah, you know,
yeah.
neighborhood development or gentrification, whichever one you want to call it, and you know, depending on where you are in your lifestyle is what it is. And I mean, you know, it's a dynamic. I try to get people to look at both sides of it.
Mhm.
And you know, when you're on one side, all you want to do is see your side. But when you look at both sides, it's almost like grocery stores when they talk about food deserts. Well, if I own the business, I'm not taking my little 2% profit margin business in a neighborhood where I know they stealing my profit.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't blame the grocery stores for not wanting to move into an area that's high crime that's taking away their profit. So what's the fix? But then we got neighborhoods now with no fruits, vegetables, and whole foods in them.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the cure? I don't know the cure. I know what the problem is, but the cure, whoo, that's another story.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. The same way with gentrification. You got all this property, all these buildings, all that. You're not affording it. You're not making it keep its value, blah, blah, blah. And we can come in here and turn this thing into a $1 billion neighborhood. It's tough to say, you know. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is why I really, are we back? And we are back. Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50, having great conversations and dialogues with lots of great folks, Christians from around Indianapolis who are doing good. This week we have invited Mark Dowd to sit in with us, have a conversation about housing. And we were just having a great discussion with HB Bell across the table from us about issues that do impact the urban community and ones that we've actually had chats about in the past. We've actually had conversations on this particular program about gentrification with black and white pastors who encounter the same kinds of concerns in their neighborhoods. So back to the issue of living in a broken and a fallen world, Mark. We were mentioning this, you mentioned this before break, and the kind of work that you're doing at the Housing Authority of the state of Indiana is helping this process. So tell us, how is the Housing Authority making this transition helpful for those who might not have as much money as somebody else does?
Well, to give a few of the details of how the programs work, our programs are set up to kind of streamline with how the whole mortgage industry works. So, but we help with, in our most popular programs help with down payment assistance. Like I said, they need several $1,000s depending on the price, the mortgage value, when they come to the closing table. So a home buyer would still go to a mortgage lender or to a bank and would still apply for a mortgage just like they normally would. They have to meet some income limits within a certain geographical area, a county. In Indianapolis, the income limits are the same for all of Marion County and the surrounding counties, with one exception being Shelby County. So if they fall within the income limit, if their credit score is sufficient, and the credit score limits for our programs are 640 if they go with a conventional loan, and 660 if they go with a FHA loan. If they meet those two criteria, then they would be eligible for our programs. But they still have to go to a lender and be underwritten. So the underwriters still make the major financial underwriting decisions, whether they're going to extend credit or mortgage to that potential buyer. So we don't try to put our thumb on that scale at all, because we want the professional people who look at these things day in, day out to decide if that person's ready to be a homeowner. If there's something in their background that is a concern to them, then they may not be ready to be a homeowner yet, because we don't want to put people in homes. Realtors don't want to sell people homes if they're not ready for it, and they're just going to default in 2 or 3 years. That doesn't really help anyone. So we have kind of a long-term view in mind. But if they are at those credit score limits and don't exceed the income limits, then in most cases they are what we consider to be financially ready to be homeowners. And another thing we offer for home buyers is we do offer a home buyer education course that they can take. HB was saying on the break that a lot of people, certainly people who've never owned a home before, don't really know the steps to do it and what all is involved, and the added responsibilities we talked about earlier when it comes to home ownership and having to repair stuff on your own instead of having your landlord do it, and things like that.
Hmm.
So there's a lot to consider, and even I as a homeowner, there's a lot I've learned about the mortgage business since taking this job. But with our home buyer education course that we can provide to potential home buyers, they can take that course as an existing homeowner or even a first-time home buyer. And some of the financing requires them to have a home buyer education course before they can use the program. We don't require, but if they go with certain type of loan, like a conventional loan, it's required. But we will reimburse them that cost if they use one of our programs. So we try to encourage people to be financially ready with their eyes wide open of what it means to be a homeowner, especially when they're first-time home buyers. And then they can use our funds for that down payment. And then once they're in the home, then usually once they're in and they make their payments after 2 years, the DPA amount is forgiven. So
DPA is?
Is down payment assistance.
Okay.
So on a let's just say a $200,000 home, to keep the math simple.
Sure.
On an FHA loan, we're going to give them $7,000.
Okay.
On a $100,000 home, we're going to give them $3,500 on an FHA loan. But in 2 years, if they stay in that home, it's forgiven. You don't have to pay it back.
Wow.
We have another program that's actually a grant at the front end, and we provide that to them, and it's forgiven right away. So the goal is to get them into homes that they're financially ready to own and be a good steward of that asset. And that's the other thing for young people, certainly people in urban areas. Besides the home being a place for stability for a family and for communities, it is also a wealth building opportunity for the ownership.
Yes.
Depending on where your home might be at, the rates of appreciation are going to be different. But in most cases, they're going to, over time, again, the long-term commitment, they're going to build wealth. And for many people, that's an important thing that maybe they've never had a chance to do. Maybe their parents didn't have a chance to do that because they've always rented or lived in an urban setting where there was, maybe they inherited a home or something. And there's a lot of programs out there to help people renovate their homes. We don't happen to do it through home ownership, but our agency does some of that. But the home can also be the primary wealth building asset for a family. Once they get in it and live in there for several years, then their next home, they may not need down payment assistance. They're ready to maybe move to a bigger home if their family's increased or something. And they have enough equity in that home that they've been making payments on, that now they can buy a next home and take the equity from their current home and apply it towards their new home.
There are so many great things to say about all of this. The first one that comes immediately to mind is the necessity of thinking long term. We live in a culture, however, that doesn't encourage that. We want things right now, and we want them the way we want them, and that's an unfortunate thing, but it is true. So when you're thinking about home ownership, you really do have to think about not even just years, but really need to think about decades in terms of gaining wealth. Proverbs says very clearly that the best kind of wealth is gained little by little, and there are no get-rich-quick schemes in life necessarily. I wanted to go back to something, again, that you said that was of interest to me. You said that you have these programs in place, and if there was, if after 2 years folks have stayed in the house, that all of that is forgiven. This is a fantastic thing, by the way, to get $7,000 for free, which is kind of cool. But anyway, back to my question. Does the Housing Authority have any metric by which you have measured the success of the programs that you're invested in?
Well, we have the data, the loan data, and I'm sure we could manipulate it to kind of get a feel for that. But we do know that our default rates aren't any higher than just the normal market, people that don't use our programs.
Okay.
Or if they are higher, they're very statistically insignificant. They're not like 5% at the normal and we're at 15% or anything like that. It's not even close to that. But so we're not out of the normal range of defaults when it comes to homeownership,
Okay.
foreclosures and things like that.
Okay, well that's good news.
Mhm.
That's a positive.
Yeah.
We actually just had a listener, Jenny. Thanks for your question here. You said, can you ask? Maybe it's already been addressed. Do you work side by side? Speaking out of Mark, with the INHP, partner with them, Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership.
Yeah, we're I guess you could call us maybe a cousin organization. So they
Okay.
serve Marion County and surrounding counties predominantly. Ours is a statewide entity, but a lot of their corporate sponsors that support their program are also participating lenders of us. Not all of them, but I think at least half, if not a little bit more than that.
Okay.
So if Indiana Neighborhood Housing Partnership is working with someone, and a lot of what they do is, well, I'm sure most all of what they do is really good. But one thing they do specialize in is helping people get ready to be homeownerships.
Okay.
Paying off debts, rehabilitating their credit standing, things like that you got to have when you're going to buy a home. So then once they've worked with someone and walked that person through that process, then that person's ready to take that next big step of home ownership. So then they would refer them to one of their corporate partners. And if it's a banking institution or even a lending company, that's also one of our participating lenders. If it's right for them, they can put them in one of our loans. So lenders, by and large, in fact, with the reforms coming out of the housing meltdown in 2007 and 8,
Right.
It's incumbent even more so, far more so now than it was before, for lenders to put people in homes with the financing package that's best for the homeowner and not what's best for the lender.
I wanted to go back to the issue that you just raised here, which really, it sounds like it's an educational issue. I mean, it sounds as if we need people like this organization that Jenny was asking about to come in and help people, walk alongside them and educate them. Because my first thought is, when you said 640, a credit rating of 640, that's still kind of high. I mean, it's not like, you're down in the 500s or something. 640 is still kind of high. So do you have people that come alongside to help that process to get people to that place? It sounds like you do.
Yeah, well, we rely on Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership for that. We don't have a special program that will walk them through sometimes a longer process than just going through a homebuyer education course.
Sure.
But there are entities out there that will do that. In fact, some lenders will do that, even if, like, say, one of the first things you do when you're ready to look for a home is you want to go to the lender of your choice, whether it's a bank or mortgage lender, and get a pre-qualification letter. And the bank then pulls their credit and kind of does a quick assessment of their financial situation without all the documents you need when you're actually applying for a loan. But they can tell the buyer how much house they can afford, or if they're even ready to be a home buyer. And there's some lenders out there that when they do that, they realize the person's not really financially ready, but they're close. They will work with them. Some of them will work with people and say, okay, pay off this bill and this bill and that bill, do this and do that, and then come back in 3 months and we'll do another credit report, or we'll see where you're at then. So they'll work with some people, and some lenders are better than others at doing that.
Okay.
But many of them do that because they look at the biggest thing for lenders and mortgage lenders is relationships key, because anymore there's things like Rocket Mortgage and things you can do online, and I'm not here to talk them down, but it's kind of like with a realtor. You have somewhat of it's a business relationship, but it's still a relationship, right? And it's kind of the same way with mortgage lenders.
Yeah.
And that's the value that they can bring that you can't get by pushing keys on a keyboard.
Yes. So the issue of building relationships is always what it's all about. I know Jenny's still on. Thanks, Jenny, for hanging in there with us for a minute. And your comment is certainly apt that relationship is crucial. I know that's true with friendships. It's certainly going to be true, let's say, for instance, in my teaching students at TMS, which I do. Those kinds of relationships matter. Students care that their professors care about them. And then, they're kind of reciprocating their response and learning and teaching from that vantage point certainly would be the same in any kind of relationship, no matter what it might be. I wanted to switch gears for a moment because I know that in the past, just a couple weeks ago, we had Dee Kennedy in. And Dee, if you're watching or pick us up later, shout out to you. Thanks again so much for being on the show. Dee is part of the Central Indiana Realtist Association. And before the show, I mentioned this to you, Mark, and you said that you're an affiliate member. So tell us a little bit about why it's important. We just mentioned relationships. Why is it important to have memberships, affiliate relationships with other organizations so that we can help each other out?
Well, that is important in my job, and I should mention I cover Marion County and Southern Indiana, and then I have a colleague that does like Hamilton County, Hendricks, Hancock, and the north.
Okay.
But for us, what we do with realtors and with lenders is we provide training, assistance, troubleshooting. Like if a lender has a question, would this particular borrower has this in their background, would they still apply or be able to use our program? So that's important. And the realist folks, that's one of my favorite groups that I meet with because they've always been very accepting to us, and they use our products quite a bit.
That's nice.
But yeah, they're a great group. I love going to their meetings. I always learn something I didn't know before. But yeah, so we try to have memberships, affiliate memberships with my board and other board of realtor organizations around the state. I'm also on the board of the Greater Indianapolis Mortgage Bankers Association, so we try to do programming for the mortgage community about different mortgage-related issues.
Sure.
In fact, next month I'm giving a presentation to the group for our programs.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's good to the better you, just like anything, it's life over. I try to impress this on my kids. It comes down to relationships, and that just gives you I don't want to say a leg up to give you an advantage over someone, but a lot of times there's that saying, I'm sure you've heard it, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So that's the kind of relationship that we need to strive for in all of our life, every facet of our life, no matter it's our faith, our friends, our place of employment, our memberships in different organizations. Those are the kinds of things that will sustain you when sometimes life takes a dip.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking here of Ecclesiastes chapter 4, which says that it's much better to have 3 strands than 2 because those are make your fabric that much stronger. Certainly something that Mark is emphasizing here about relationships and the importance of that. You mentioned all of the different kinds of folks that are in and around Indianapolis, the people that you have relationships with, and these other organizations, boards that you're on, and that kind of thing. We talked earlier about the necessity of building stability within neighborhoods. Let's talk for a moment about building stability within a city and the importance of seeing a city as beneficent to all of its citizens and the concerns that you might bring to bear on that particular issue.
Well, that is a very large undertaking. My previous life, I worked in politics, in public affairs, and government, and things like that. And so that exposed me to a lot of different government actors, government people.
Sure.
And a city as large as Indianapolis, you just take a scenario of one person trying to buy one house and afford that house and make improvements to that house and things, and then multiply it by however many residents there are. That is a big, tough undertaking. And HB, I want to say HB, we touched on that a little bit on the break, and man, our programs are available statewide. Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership does a lot here in Marion County and Indianapolis, and we certainly support what they do. They support what we do. We're kind of all in it together, and it works that way with in most cases with mortgage lenders, especially with the Sierra Group we mentioned earlier. If they have a person that their particular institution as a mortgage lender, because there's mortgage people that attend the Sierra meetings, it's not all realtors. They have a kind of a smaller group of just lenders out of the CIRA group they'll pass a file to someone else, say, hey, I can't help them because we can't do these type of loans or something, but maybe you could.
Maybe you can, yeah.
And they'll get together either on the phone or in person, and they'll try to work through one particular file to help someone if that's possible. And so at the city, when it comes to government and city levels, you have to kind of, I'm seeing this more and more. I've had an interesting last couple of weeks at our church looking at the whole issue of diversity.
Yeah.
And the key is you have to figure out how to treat the person in front of you as a person and not just as some kind of statistic.
Right.
And I think that works in government too. What I did with my other past life is I did a lot of what we call casework, where people would call into the office, they needed some kind of help, or they're having a problem with a government agency, they didn't think they were getting the proper response, so we would try to help. We couldn't order like an agency to do something against the law, obviously, or anything like that. But we did ask, just give them due process, just hear them out, just see if there's another way you can help them. And so it's a lot of just being able to help people, even on a one-on-one basis. That can buy you, if you're sincere about it, a lot of goodwill. And that's what I think our society needs right now, is people that, instead of yelling at others or just trying to ignore them and think they don't exist, hear them out, hear what their story is. And in most cases, I think you'll realize you have more in common with them than what you might initially think.
Sure.
Or assume.
Yeah, this is a powerful statement when you stop to think about living in a pluralistic society, and by pluralistic I mean that everybody should be listened to, not necessarily believed, but we treat people, as fellow human beings, instead of a box to be checked or some kind of identity quotient or whatever the case may be. We treat each other with respect and love and care because that's what Christ did for us, and we demonstrate that same thing for everybody else. We just have a couple minutes left before our show closes here today, Mark. So I wanted to give you a minute here to kind of give an overview, some last statement, maybe a directive, an encouragement, whatever the case might be, here in the last minute or so that you have, to let everybody know about the kinds of work that you do and the importance of the work that you do, and then how that work can help other people.
Well, we have 6 different programs that can help. We can help people with getting a credit against their taxes. We have a VA program that can help veterans, especially if veterans are moving from another state to Indiana to take a job. We have a relocation benefit that they can key into as part of a program through the state of Indiana. So that is another way to get more people in Indiana paying taxes, buying houses, and kind of churning the whole economic machinery that benefits everyone. We're developing new programs that's going to add more money to help people with closing costs and prepaids, because those are becoming kind of the next big obstacle that's keeping people from owning homes. So there's a lot of programs out there. People just don't know that they're there. So if you're working with a realtor, or you think you might be buying a home, or even if you think it was never possible for you to be a homeownership, just think again and go to places like INHPE or Indiana Housing and Community Development. Our website is homeownership.in.gov. And look over the programs. My contact information is on there. And give us a call or talk to one of our participating lenders by all means, and say, hey, I didn't think I could buy a home, but if there's programs out there through Indiana Housing that helps with down payments, I've been paying rent for 5 years. Perhaps maybe I could actually own a home. What do I need to do? And then that lender will work with them on an individual basis and see if they would be a good candidate for home ownership.
Man, Mark, it's been so great to have you here on the show. Our time goes so fast, as it always does. We're grateful for the good work that you do in and around Indianapolis, all of the boards that you're on, all of the interactions, and of course, the relationships that are key that you mentioned earlier. We're grateful for all of that and the kind of influence that you have, not only in the city of Indianapolis, but specifically with individuals who are hoping to buy homes and become homeowners themselves. Next week, we are going to be in a brand new venue. Looking forward to that. HB and I are going to travel across the town here a little bit, and looking forward to new things, new opportunities. We're going to be having great guests over the next month, of course, as we always have been. We've been doing this for 3 years. We have had over 200 shows, over 200 guests. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve Indianapolis and the Christian community in this particular way, and thankful ever so much for all of our listeners. And Jenny writes in one last time, Mark, you should be knowing that Jenny's going to be looking you up on the website to learn more for your clients. This is the way we connect folks in and around Indianapolis. You've been listening to Warp and Woof Radio, RadioNX.TV at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 11 to 11:50. We're coming back to you again next Wednesday. Looking forward to that and the opportunity to share with you Christians who are doing good. Until then, we'll see you then.